Ironic libel.
Iron light, more like iron shite.
See, I should let you never speak again, probably.
I
Uh, Jeepers.
I reused that.
We're
I
not that
reused
ironic,
that.
are we? That's not our thing. We're not. We're here trying to
Yeah,
be
we're
honest.
ironic. Dude, irony is only insufferable when like the person that uses the irony is like constant, like there's never an end. Like
Mm.
there's never a point where they're literal,
A long
you
spectrum
know?
leading from the wits and witticisms of Oscar Wilde to the one squeaky voiced kid from the Polar Express, and just everyone's somewhere. Anyway,
Dude, isn't it so crazy how little you have to describe a character and just everybody, it's ubiquitous. The squeaky voice kid from the Polar Express. That was
it's just that
fucking
season.
perfect.
We're recording this going into the
Right on the
holidays,
nose and
honestly.
on theme, right? On theme, very timely.
Very timely because it's
Josadius, Pragasvar. It's been an eventful week. It's been an eventful two.
yeah.
I've been with Jordan in person. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about
It
it
was great.
in the
It was
post
awesome.
interview. Um, but for
Pageant
now,
it,
why don't you start us off,
yeah, yeah,
Jordan?
yeah. For the time being, we have to go over what happened in Praguespar. When last we left our heroes, they were riding towards a fleet of airships, right? And this is the technological up and coming country of Nyxfair, pulling together all their crazy technologies and setting off for war against Sarah Strath, the dragons, the old guard, D&D, blah blah blah. The party has stakes on both sides. They've got friends and enemies on both sides. So it was going to be pretty saucy. But before they get there, this session began with a cutscene. It might be my favorite cutscene I've ever run. I don't know. It's one of them for sure. Um, but we flash
Dude,
back
it was sweet.
to
It was really
17
sweet.
years, 17 years before the campaign, and this is from the perspective of Arlo Fix, who's in a whip these days. That's Charlie's old PC. They got stranded into a weapon, and was
I'm in a whip.
recently laying on the headstone of his and his wife's grave last session, and not a big deal was made of it really, there because so much was happening to the party. So I wanted to harken back to it, and we flash back to Arlo Fix's wedding with Emery Spade. So we see I play as Emery, Charlie as Arlo. We resume and have their brief dialogues, and there's new tension. They are having a child. They are with child, and they're worried about that. But it's also such a sweet night and a sweet day. They make this pact to run away together, which we know will end up happening and go catastrophically. We smash cut over to Arkansalis and Mislin, Houston's old PC, who's stranded inside of a staff now, right? And Arkansalis talks to Mislin for a minute, and they have a cute little stress about giving a speech and stuff. And then smash cut over to Severo Maravilla, Max's old PC, meeting with, introduce Jim Shepik. We have a guest player for this campaign. He's playing Mad Ivan, a member of the Astra Assembly, an old friend of Arkansalis's, friend, loosely defined, right? But an old guard level 17 wizard with just erratic personality. So there's a cute little. I mean, the wedding scene doesn't have terribly much to report. Revelia makes an appearance, another member of the Astra Assembly. These are the leaders of the world of Sarastrath, the old guard that's getting invaded by the airships tomorrow. So I wanted to show some of these world leaders 17 years ago, just to try and play the sympathy card a little bit, get them known, you know. But Arkansalis gives a lovely little speech. Shout out to the Haunting of Bly Manor for that speech that I lifted and intensely modified.
I did
The,
not know this.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. The loving someone means accepting that you will leave them, and if this scares you like it scares me, run away. Go do drugs on a beach. Go commit to a life of the mind. It was a beautiful little speech, and I love
Very
Arkansalis.
Rick and Morty, like don't don't fuck up like I did, like my dad did, commit to science, travel the universe. Love is a recourse that animals used, or that intelligent animals use to justify mating.
Good enough.
Bleak.
It's pretty bleak, but Arkansalis brings it back around at the end, where he's like, if in spite of the inevitable loss of this person, you still choose to love them, that is a brave and powerful thing, right? That is something more brave than I've ever been able to do. Arkansalis has never committed himself to that inevitability of loss. So his character will be relevant. Cute flashback, lots of great little moments. Mad Ivan, Jim's PC, gets a chance to like interrupt the wedding brutally and like look the groom in the eyes, and he's it's ridiculous. But we come back to the present
Jim
day.
Jam.
Um, Foreboding International by night ascends the airship to listen to Prince Parless's plan to win the war the next day. He wants it to be a single battle, and he wants it to be decisive. Parless's plan, since they don't have the technology to overthrow entire hordes of dragons, which Sarastrath is capable of producing, the plan is to win a strategic victory. Parless plans to have a defensive front line of airships that keeps a long, grindy battle waging on, such that, in the meantime, a secondary, smaller fleet of ships can go and hold like massive firepower over one of the cities of Sarastrath to compel a surrender. Shout out to Legend of the Galactic Heroes Battle of Vermilion, is what that plan is based on.
Wow.
But, in any case, there's one last chance for field negotiations. So the party suits up, they ride out. I get to introduce Bruenor Battlehammer, which is a name taken from old D&D lore. He's a general for Nick Fair's army, and
He's a cock.
he's terrible.
Oh my God.
He's terrible. It was Patrick Warburton voice, a lot of fun to do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I heard that.
I tried to keep it kind of subtle. It was terrible, but no, that was really fun. So we have those little dialogues. Baragon goes into full war mode, and this, I think, is kind of the story of a session with a lot of story in it. A lot of story outside of the game, that is. In game, the vast majority of it took place in combat. I put on the Nier soundtrack, which was huge for Targonra, so I planned on like pulling on your heartstrings a tiny bit, Charlie. Though I left out the one musical cue that seemed to be most precious to that world.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Nier. So we were listening to the Nier.
Oh yeah, no, right. But
Yeah.
you left something. Okay, you left something out.
You know it in an instant if you heard it. It's what Warwick heard when he got the Apocrypha. The boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. No, that's iconic.
So I left that one out.
I love that.
But the music was great. The scene was dramatic, but Max as Baragon was in war mode. He was in ferocious Catman, tear your heart out and eat it. Stoic, we are an army. I'm a general. I'm going to do what I have to do. There are going to be hard wins and hard losses. And not everyone was in that mode for this game, which there was a second miscalculation, which I'll get to in just a second. The party rides out as a group, encounters the other army. Revelia, who's in rock form, ROC, this giant bird, transforms back into a woman, does some badass ninja shit. They have a platform upon which to do final negotiations. Parless rides out, the party rides out behind him. Vizier, who the party encountered, the silver dragon who leads Sarastrath's forces, Revelia comes out, and Mad Ivan comes out. Jim's character was not just in the flashback, he is also participating in today's session. The plan for this session, maybe I'll keep it to behind the screens, but the two are always interweaving these days.
Right.
Meshing so quickly. So there's a final conversation. There's a final dialogue. And Vizier doesn't speak. Revelia speaks on his behalf, but says, listen, forfeit all the land you took in the last war. Fight doesn't have to happen here today, right? And of course, Parless is happy to draw this out, because the longer time it takes, the closer his airships are getting to threatening that other city. Revelia starts talking to Cal, who is put forward to speak on behalf of Parless.
Oh, this was so great. I loved this conversation, dude.
And she says, we have one chance to stop these thought great men, these children with massive weapons, with hellfire, with firepower inconceivable. With armies behind them, you and I have a chance to make this all work. And we can do that, can't we? They're communicating telepathically as well as vocally. And as they're talking, they do the pleasantries, they talk a little bit about the terms of what would be required to be forfeit from Nyxfair to Sarastrath to make a peace available. And as they're talking, Claymore Patch, who is silent, he is in disguise, nobody knows who his character is, sits at the back of the party with the gun in his hand, with Anton Parless's name on it, standing behind Parless, with the capacity to shoot him to the back. And it becomes apparent, through Cal's dialogues with Revelia, that if Parless were to die here, war would be avoidable. He is the one leading this shit to happen. If he goes, the head of the army is cut off. So Patch has that gun burning a hole in his pocket. Claymore Patch, who has done insane things to stop that gun from going off before. He got it from Drizzt Do'Urden. He didn't shoot Drizzt Do'Urden when the man was running away, even though the gun went online. He bluffed when he was cornered by a super high-level wizard to make sure his sister wouldn't get shot. He got shot by a fake version of the gun that he made, all just to stop it from happening. And he does it again. If he shoots, war stops, but he doesn't. Negotiations aren't going super well. It was going to be challenging no matter what this encounter, because Revelia's son is Mislin, is the NPC, or the PC, Houston's other character, trapped inside of Baragon's staff. And she brings this up, and Baragon is in war mode. Max threatens her, says he'll kill her with her son, and her son will have to watch as he eats her heart out, and starts saying all this crazy shit at the negotiations table. And here is the first moment where I had to make a huge DM decision, which is a question I faced in Targonra a long time ago with Jim's PC Lorelei, and that is, how much can you punish a character in a game for a mood that a player was in, right? Lorelei, it's a thought experiment in D&D almost that I talk about sometimes. There was a scene in Targonra when our very good aligned party, Lorelei, this young rogue woman, just killed 3 hobos because it was funny, because it was kind of a joke, because we were all around the table, we were in a raucous mood that night. Who knows why? You know, it was chaotic. I was polymorphed into a platypus. There was so much dumb shit happening, because it just happens in D&D sometimes. But then after that, are we going to have a sad, realize what you've done arc for the first people she killed because she killed 3 hobos under a bridge? Like, are we gonna let that be a part of the story? Are we gonna have actual consequences for that action? And in the same way, is this the way Max's Baragon would have behaved under the most reverent conditions? Of course not, right? But we were in war mode. We'd been talking it up and getting violent, and it seemed like the fight was inevitable. So the dialogue is awesome, but negotiations fail. Cal hears at the last second, before their mental connection is cut off forcibly by the wizard at their side, Cal hears, the strategic victory goes both ways. There's a threat to Bellamon, is what he hears, which Parlis said was impossible, because Bellamon is the force field defended city. Revelia says, even then, we have an actual threat against the city. So the big fight is not happening on this battlefield. But war breaks out. Revelia is stoked to tears by Baragon's ranting. Parlis is not shot, and the people retreat to their ships, and we roll for initiative. We're doing an alternative initiative system called Aces High, designed for aerial combat, which is tricky at first. And here we run into, and it's become at this point that my behind the screens is going to blur completely with the session recap. It becomes apparent very quickly that this system is a little weird. It's a little new. How do bonus actions work? How do movements work? Where do people go? What happens? Is not super clearly established at the start. But there are massive stakes. My plan was that the players would find a way to make peace. That either Patch would shoot the gun, or Cal would pull some crazy shit and say some of the right words at the right time somehow, and that the countries would find at least a tentative peace for a moment. And then there would be a secondary dilemma of stop those other fleets from hovering and threatening those cities. And then there would be probably Mad Ivan was going to break rank anyways and attack, right? He was going to say, I don't agree with this peace, I disregard it, and he was going to fly off, summon an elemental from the air to fight alongside him. And the party, without the airships, was going to have to take down this wizard together, which would have been pretty easy. That combat would have worked out. But as things happened, since we are going to war, Revelia, the Rock, is in initiative, and the party has an airship, which I assumed would cancel out, but really didn't. This was a tough challenge.
Yeesh.
Round one, Jim's wizard does a firestorm, and there's apparently a level 17 ability you can get as an evocation wizard where you just max out damage. So he just 70 damages Patch and Cal. Cal is
well, we two out of the 3 of us survive it. 1 out of the 3 of us. we're all up. Like we're all up. Like in the same initiative. It was a big deal at the moment. Go on. Go ahead.
No, it was pretty crazy. So Cal pulls some crazy stunt. I make a big mechanical fuck up, which is in mounted combat in 5e, as I've been running it. You're supposed to share a hit pool with your mount, but I didn't do that. Unlike the
Oh
very first round,
no.
Baragon got hit. And he's like, "Is it me or my Drake?" And I said, it's your Drake," because he needed something, right? Because I realized it was gonna be so fucking bad. That set a bad precedent because then when the party's hit by this massive spell, all their mounts die. So they're free falling in air, right? I DM bullshit Patch onto the deck of the ship, hoping that he can scoop
Oh
Cow, hoping
yeah.
that
Okay.
Baragon can Drake down and get Cow, and they don't. Cal spends most of this combat, 2 of the 4 rounds, just falling. Just free falling, unable really to take actions.
I was a
Pat,
little cocked off, but I think it was just, dude, I really chalk it up to just the novelty and everybody was so overwhelmed by the new system. It happens.
it
We'll
does.
talk about it.
And I think this is I've independently learned why video games will have sometimes either tutorials or bullshit easy levels to just kind of introduce new
Yeah.
mechanics to you before they
Yeah.
put everything on the line with those mechanics. Because Aces High, I think, is really cool and could have been a lot of fun. But because the party had their actual lives threatened, because their backs are against a wall here, and the story is at such a climactic point, like this has huge influence over the world, players did not have a lot of interest in trying to pull off cool stunts and just do shit that looked really cool. You know, they would have if it was a low stakes fight for sure, but it's not, and it wasn't. So the fight wages on. I don't need to go into mechanical detail too much. The situation we end up being left in is this rock has been 1v1ing Baragon. He's doing a disproportionately amazing job, but it still doesn't look like it's enough. When we pick up next session, it is from the top of initiative. So it is the Rock's turn to try and kill Baragon, and then a fully loaded 17th level Wizard's turn to try and wipe out a low health Cal and Patch, right? That's the situation we're in. Mad Ivan, Jim used his spells really well. He's a lot of fun to play D&D with, but it was so powerful. Like having the Rock in the fight basically takes Baragon out of it, and it's just Cal and Patch who don't have a lot of DPS trying to stitch something together, which they always do. Except maybe not this time.
Well, we stopped in the middle.
We stopped in the middle. Who's to say what happens next round? I have a little bit of insight as to it, but I walked away from the session. This is the first time in a long time that I've walked away from, probably since like episode 5 or 6, that I felt pretty bad leaving a session. Just because, first of all, I care a lot about Max and how he plays D&D. And I want Pragasfar to be important to him. I want it to be a genuine challenge to him. And if he participates in it in this mode, you know, where Baragon is kind of static and Baragon stays kind of violent, I don't think I'm going to be able to tease out what I have been able to from Cal and Patch in little ways. Because their characters are softer. Their characters are, I don't know, they change and they're complicated and they're problematic. So I will probably try something very radical with Baragon next session. I don't know what form is that going to take. But I need to try and crack that nut. I need to try and bring Max closer to his character. In any case, that was one of the few failures. The other was that, yeah, Cal did not have a place in this combat, right? By the time you were back on the deck of a ship, you sent out heals, which were really nice. You brought Patch back up. And you two are facing down Mad Ivan together now. But there was a long time where it was your turn, you're falling, you do a bonus action, maybe. It's your turn again, you're falling. You're not accruing points the way Aces High work.
Listen, Cal, like Charlie as a player might have been frustrated. Cal had to have been relieved. Like, I was never put in a position where I had to actually hurt somebody.
Hey, that's crazy.
You know? Like, he feared for his life, but things work out. We'll talk about it.
We will. And we'll play through it, right? I still have no idea how this is all going to play out. The party is on a massive cliffhanger. The war wages around them. There's a threat to Bellamon, question mark. There's a bunch of airships headed towards a civilian population, commanded by Bruenor Battlehammer, this Nukem Dukem kind of guy who doesn't give a shit about anything. Very risky and very scary situations to be in all around. But Man, it was a tough session. It was brutal. It was cool. It was. I like the aerial combat. I like the aesthetic of it, but you really had to say you were
It
gonna eat this dude's mom's heart in front of him. Like, come on, man.
I
You're
don't
breaking
it
my
was
balls.
you got I mean, my opinion about the whole thing, and we'll get into it during post
Yeah, yeah.
interview.
We shouldn't talk about it too much, but
Punish Baragon, dude. Max is down. Like make do something crazy
The Rock has like
because
108 hit points left, so
do something crazy and pull the trigger on Baragon like maybe Bendra didn't have the courage to do to Lorelai. You gotta you
I I
gotta
I know Max is an amazing role player and absolutely has the capacity to do that. But I
yeah.
think he and everyone would have been better serviced by a lower stakes aerial combat fight.
Who a
Who
there
can
were there
say?
were
Who
good
can
parts,
say?
there were bad parts. I have no end of things to share about it. But in the meantime,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was
should we
that.
pass the baton?
Oh please, get me out of this.
Okay.
I have thought about this session way too much since it happened.
Yeah,
Way.
yeah, yeah. Well, things don't look any better for the brains and bots over in Josadius. In fact, I would say that they look a lot worse. Um, Let me look at my notes here. So we should start out. I'm gonna share my screen a little bit here. We're gonna do some visualizing. Um, we got this crazy map, right? We got this insane map. Uh, we got Zedchuk just revealed himself as Kalesh, the Iron Fisted King. We've got the brains and bots still separated. It's a 2-on-1. There's an orcish army pouring in, and an ultimatum. Just just as Zedchuk reveals himself, the two magically suggested kings elect, these Fomorian titans, leap down through the portal and have a conversation with Kalesh, the Iron Fisted King. They accuse him. They say you were using your own people as fodder to maintain a facade, an illusion. And enraged at this sort of uh, 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 defiance from his subjects, Zedchuk tells them to get in line, and they don't. They decide that they are going to make their stand against their king, and the scale is tipped, perhaps in the direction of the brains and bots. Now, meanwhile, we head back over. Let me see if I can find this map quickly. We head back over to the throne room where Cross is changed to his father's pointy throne. There is Cross's adopted father, Brent, Sly Honorlock, the Water Genasi, Kartikeya, and Greg's old character, Azaki, just teleported into the room, as well as another one of these King's Elect from Orient Titans, all made more complicated by the fact that Pain, which is the name of this King's Elect, has actually taken a liking to Brent, to Krust's adopted father. Pain has had all these little seeds of doubt sown in his mind ever since it has been his job to stay posted up guarding Krust's adopted father. But now his resolve to his king are put to the test. He explodes into his Titan form, starts battling it out with Izaki and Kartikeya. Krust and Sly, still chained there, make a final plea. They say, listen, you don't want to do this. Your king is corrupt. Let us go. Lead us against your king. You don't want to do this. They roll a persuasion check, but they don't quite roll high enough to get the optimal condition. Instead, Pain takes a position of neutral Jing, which is, you know what? I'll point you, I'll do whatever you want. I'll point you in the direction of where he is. I'll let you guys go, but I'm not fighting. I'm going to sit right here in this cave, and I'm not going to interfere because it's not my place, because I have my heart's in two places. my loyalty, my pride, my people, and what's right, what's wrong, and what's not so obvious. So we drop out of initiative. He frees Crust and Sly, reaching and grabbing these golden chains and pulling them off of them with no key, as if the chains became liquid. It's kind of a cool magical item that I homebrewed. And they make their way back into the dragon-sized tunnels to fight against an entire army of orcs. Okay, it's a mess.
But coolness is
Now,
on their side, right?
oh yeah. Now Gleason realizing, and we'll go back to the other map very quickly. Gleason realizing, as soon as he steps into this map, during all those hundreds of years, it strangely enough slipped his mind that he had built this apparatus. Right? He has another moment in the very same in a very similar fashion to the one when he saw the great depiction of the orcish god chieftain dealing with the good tusks, right? And he realizes, not only did I build this giant floating apparatus in this storm dimension, I could destroy them. I could make it so whatever these things do, there will never be a risk of it happening, right? So I'll stop sharing. That's about all the diagramming I need to do.
That was sweet. New
Oh
precedent
yeah,
set for the technology of our podcasts.
Absolutely nuts. So the King Kalesh, is blasted off the map, right? Keith, he's on a Pegasus, he's got his Eldritch blast people. They are suspended on floating stones using magic into a perpetual upside down storm. And Kalesh is blasted off the map, plummeting hundreds and hundreds of feet in a single round. But not before he snaps his fingers, a la Thanos. And the enchantment, this sort of tattoo, this mark that I've mentioned, that are present on all the arms of the original party, is activated. And the effects start to take hold in Keith's mind and take control. He starts to recede back into his own mind, sort of watching his body do things of its own accord, cast spells and magic. And he's trapped here in his mind with a little porthole to look through to see what's actually happening. Inside of that porthole, however, is his patron, the Traveler. And they have an exchange. The Traveler says, well, it seems you're a pretty tricky spot. I might be able to offer you a way out if you're willing to do me a favor.
Corner the
okay,
market,
we'll leave it there for now. Leave it off on a cliffhanger. And get to the behind the screens here, because it is that time. So Jordan and I might have talked about this a little bit last session, but we were working off 2 maps, 2 initiatives. Every time an initiative would end on one map, we'd go over to the other, right? And the party's just desperately fighting between an orc army, just trying to plow through it, one elephant chunk at a time, to reunite with each other, right? And this is another. We are so deep into this campaign, right? They have marshaled so many resources. They have set so many things in motion in this world that, maybe you went out, that something like this was bound to happen, right? Sorry, Josh went out there for a minute. I was worried about my connection. Josh sits incredibly still. And the party, the tension is palpable. The party's really excited to reunite. And I'm really excited for them to get back together. The system. Oh, well, actually, I should talk about this first. I wasn't sure. It's difficult for me to set persuasion check DCs. It's difficult for me to reduce everything down to, and Jordan, you have a lot of feelings about the way that the rules of D&D navigate social encounters. You know, I don't know how much we talked about how you don't really use deception. And I use deception in very different ways in my campaign. I've sort of tried to marry the rules with a more realistic thing that puts more of an irreverent importance on those social encounters, right? For me, it's not social encounters. It's the most important part of this game, right? Social encounters is incredibly like diminishing, right? It's this game is about people having like pretend people having conversations, meeting other pretend people, and building a story together. It's not a social encounter, right? It's dialogue. It's this most sacred part of fiction is the way the characters interact. Well, at least that's how I feel. But the way that persuasion and sort of deception works in Josadius is that seeds are sown. You know, like I'll tell them, listen, you know, you don't really have to make a deception check on people that you've never met. For the most part, they'll believe you. Just like if they tell you a lie, you'll probably believe them because you never met them. You know, they used to be able to make insight checks on things like giant robots, and I'd let it slide. But now I'll be like, listen, if you try and make an inside check on a Warforged, not only is this somebody you just met, but they also don't really, their face is made of wood and steel. Their eyes glow with gems. Like, how are you going to pick tells out of a face like that?
Yeah, not
But
allowed
I
to
do
read
let
that.
them roll deception checks, right? Just in case they get to a point. I let them make those inside checks as they get to know the character better, so that perhaps eventually, if they roll well enough on an insight, a deception, a persuasion, they'll be able to make those big impacts, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've been doing, and they've been doing that sort of on pain on some of the other Kings Elect um, throughout this campaign. Now, the Kings Elect, I should mention, and we'll go. There's a great cutscene, one of my favorite cutscenes that also surely the hardest for my party to have followed.
The
Wherein,
best ones. DM jerk off.
right, the one where I just have a conversation with myself for 15 minutes. Yeah.
Been there.
Wherein it's revealed that the Kings Elect, that Kalesh the Iron Fisted King chose those particular orcs to give these Titan powers because they knew the most. Because the best way to take care of people that might be a problem is to ingratiate yourself to them. Because if you, let's say Kalesh snapped his fingers, had their heads cut off, so the seeds would be sown in his people. They would think, why were these 5 orcs' heads cut off? They would look into it. They had families. But instead, he gave them these powers. He made them the most important orcs in his military. And so now they have this great power, but it backfired on it, right? Because Kalesh took it too far. Again and again, he took it too far. He screwed his people over. He screwed the Iron Tribe people over again and again. And now he's getting his comeuppance. The orcs were actually like the King's Elect that Keith suggested were actually like really quite a boon, because they were able to, the two of them single-handedly hold off this army of orcs, while Keith and Glacier were able to just handle Kalesh, right? So the way the combat worked, initially they were like, we're super outnumbered, there's an army of orcs, but they evened out the odds. There was a critical moment where Keith was like, listen, I have them suggested, and if I release this spell, then they might turn on us. Well, now the King's Elect have been emboldened. They had seen what the king had done in favor of resurrecting a woman in his dreams, and they had enough. So he dropped the suggestion, and everything worked out. Those little seeds that were sown through those little social encounters that happened in the background, in the foreground, it paid off.
That's
and
awesome.
I was nervous. I was like, Keith did this thing a while ago, and I really wanted to pay off. And I hope that Mac, who plays Keith, was really happy that they earned some very powerful allies in an important moment. That was Josadius. A lot of next session is going to be combat, and just like the details of that. And it is wild. Like it is an insane combat. It is one of the most insane combats I've ever run. But that's my time. Let's get into some post-interview stuff. As you were talking, Jordan, I was writing some stuff down that I wanted to talk about.
Oh wow, you're so up on the notes and the prep, and you're on a different tier of production than me. You know.
Well, I mean, you spent the money on the mic.
Our $5 Patreons can watch me speak, and then the $10 Patreons are gonna get Charlie's editions as well. But
no. It's just like there's always, I'm in your campaign, right? So there's always things that I want to talk about our campaign.
It's a risk we assume.
But the first thing I wanted to talk about is like Jim's irreverence, because Houston and the context, right, is that Houston and all of us we're very reverent. We're like, this is sacred. We're going to really get into our characters. And for Jim, in a lot the same way that a lot of my great players are good at compartmentalizing, to Jim, at the end of the day, it's a world where he can do anything. And that's a really exciting prospect. As Lorelei, he wandered off into a maze. He killed some hobos, because it's a game. Because the consequences of whatever Lorelei does will inspire later on some consequence that will maybe change her or be important. And I think in a big way for Max, Jim and Max have that in common. For Max, it's like, this is a game. Let's do something dramatic. Let's threaten Revelia. Let's threaten this archdruid with her own son. Let's threaten to pull her heart out. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. And it's not punishing the player. I know how apprehensive you are. I'm going to give you an example right now of when one of my old DMs punished a player. Okay. Our campaign went up in flames. There were tears. There was yelling. There was drinking. There was, there were reunions and there was forgiveness.
Are you sure this was a game and you're not trying to process something via D&D?
No, I swear to God, man. So,
okay.
Shout out to Adam Camps. He was DMing a great campaign for us. Unfortunately, one of our players was deeply irrevocably in love with him. She was also in the same way that Jim and Max are so happy that they can just go into this world and do whatever they want. She was talking shit to her god. She was also kind of dominating the campaign. She was interrupting people. She was talking over people. And this was a lot of people in this campaign. This was like 6 of us. So airtime was already difficult to come upon. And so Adam decides not to have a conversation with her, but to take away her patron. In game, he says, Sarah, or he says to Sarah's character, he says, listen, you reach out to your god, he doesn't respond, and you realize that your god has withdrawn from you. And Sarah just completely halts the session. She's like, why the fuck did you take my patron away? Like, that was my whole thing. And Adam was like, I'm realizing, this is with all of us in the room. He's like, I'm now realizing that was probably a bad move, that I probably should have just had a conversation with you. They start going back and forth. We're just sitting in the middle of the room, like waiting for this to resolve. Finally, I intervene because I'm like, you guys are getting nowhere. Tell each other what you want. We're going to get the fuck out. You guys talk. Okay?
What else do you do?
Max is not the type of person, because at the end of the day, Max isn't like, Max, the person, has not committed any party fouls.
No, of
His
course not.
character has made decisions because listen, man,
It's all in the game still.
everything is right. Everything is a mood, right? You said, oh, this is an isolated incident. Like Max is just in a mood. Dude, everything is a mood. Like Cal, everything that Cal does is because I'm in a mood. Because I was in a mood when I wrote it. Because I want to be in this mood. You know what I'm saying? I think that just don't just be crazy. Just do something nuts. You know? Make it mean something. Make Max fall ass over tea kettle. You know, put Baragon in a corner. That's the advice you didn't ask for, but the advice I'm giving to you.
I mean, it's coming up, right? It's at the point where I was either gonna feel so guilty for the situation the players are in. I would feel so personally responsible that I would justify a Deus Ex Machina, like a way to save them, or I feel not quite responsible enough. I feel like they had a lot of say over their situation, and so I let things play out. And that's kind of just how it's gonna have to go. I also want to bring out. First of all, the fight was avoidable in some ways, so there's a little bit of it's okay, Josh. But even once it happened, if Baragon had attacked Mad Ivan, different fight. Baragon's
Dude,
showing out with 50 damage in a round, man.
It could be way worse.
That's
because
true, too.
At the end of the day,
way worse.
all of us are up. Like we're 7th level characters. Cal threw out a delay. Patch has his weird thing when he goes unconscious.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Like he gave it to Baragon. Baragon's up. It's all good in the hood, dude. You had to do a little bit of DM bullshitting. It's all bueno in the barrio. We're here.
Surprisingly
we
less.
are back.
No,
none of us have even. Yeah.
It's good for me to have Jim too, because I could tell him like I'm not gonna affect your character in game. Be mean, right? Like play it like you're Mad Ivan. You're part of this encounter. I can't shore you up. I can't rein you in, you know? There's even one point during the fight when he pauses it, or when we mute each other, and he's like, hey, I'm going to do this next round, right? And it's the first time he's pointed anything out to me. And I'm like, dude, you got to do what you're going to do, right? Like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah.
It's, you let an attack dog at the party. And
yeah, it was
I could see, because when, we should tell the audience, Cal cast a home-brewed Josh Jordan brand cleric spell called Delay.
It's a cool spell.
Any single amount of damage can be stopped, negated, so long as you're able to maintain concentration for 10 rounds. Cal, 3rd level spell, 64 points of cold damage from some crazy blizzard spell, right? Cone of cold. And it blasts over Cal, but he's okay. He feels the impact of the gangrene, the frostbite, everything, but reverses time and maintains concentration. That being said, he takes some damage later, drops concentration. First hit, a bunch of damage. Second hit, 64 points cone of cold. And Cal is still miraculously unconscious, but not dead. And you and Jim, I remember you guys both just like collapsing onto the couch. Like, oh my God, we thought Cal was dead.
I thought this was sure it. Cal was dead.
And that's what D&D is all about, man. It's the thrill. Those moments where you're like, holy shit, did this character die? Those are second only to character introductions. The best part of the campaign, I tell everybody, the best part of the campaign is the beginning. It's all downhill, except for when you're not sure if a character's alive or dead.
Oh, wow. Thanks, man. I know how to round out Pragastar at the end.
That's what it's all about, dude. You got to be mean to your players. You have to be. You have to throw them overwhelming fights. You know.
And sometimes Kings
you gotta
put some giants up there.
Say what you will, man. It's one of those things.
It's one of those things.
Yeah, I wanted to also bring up how much I enjoyed Cal just like bullshitting with an archdruid.
Ah, it was sweet.
Time and time again, the thing about being a politician, a diplomat, anything like that, is that you have to talk to important people and pretend that it's normal. Cal is just a dude. He's taking medicine that's poisoning him. He's really just a guy who is from a place. He has some magic, and he had to face up to an archdruid. He had to face up to Prince Barlas, have this sort of pregnant conversation. Vizier's giant metal silver head looming over top of them both.
Breathing frost down their backs as they try to discover peace.
Right. And Cal had to do it. And that was a moment, right? Like that was
awesome.
a moment where you were like, I'm gonna put Cal in a position where all his skills as a diplomat are gonna be put to the test. Was that it? That was it. That was it. So I think it worked out. I don't think it could have worked out better. There's part of me that's like, what could Cal have said? What could Cal have done?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's not one of those things where there was a scripted outcome, right? I'm like, I telling Jim as we prep, I'm like, I really don't know how it's going to play out. Matt Ivan's going to attack no matter what. So just have that much ready.
We should also talk about how you gave Jim the option. Matt Ivan can be on the side of Nick's Fair or of Sarah Strath, and Jim was like, "No, fuck that. I'm fighting. We're fighting. We're squaring up.
No, it's a great way to
your
do
characters, Josh.
Guest players as guest villains. Mwah. Best way to do it, I think. Best way.
Oh, hell yeah!
It's so much fun because then if they kill a player, you get such a fun little story. Remember when Jim joined up and just killed Charlie and left?
Ashley Birch, shout out Critical Role.
Yep.
Everybody blames her for the death of Molly Mock.
Even though, I mean, come on.
And obviously that's not the case,
No, that was another really interesting situation though. We're like, why was the party in Crit Roll? This is a shout out to Crit Roll Campaign 2, like episode 20.
Yeah, whatever. Crit Roll doesn't need any more shout outs.
Yeah, they fucking don't. But no, it's another one of those moments that I make into a tiny lesson in my head, right? Because two of the players, Laura and Travis, were out. They were having a child. They couldn't rejoin the game. And the party went on an adventure to reclaim their characters, to recapture them. They couldn't succeed at that because the players couldn't come back to the game yet. So there was realistically no way that succeeded. I mean, it wasn't even a close combat. And as such, if you hear the mingled responses of my father in the background, Michigan's playing Ohio State right now.
Yeah.
Shout out to Go Blue or whatever.
We're recording a podcast on game day.
We're such fucking nerds.
Yeah, yeah.
Not have given that away.
I hate this, dude.
but yeah, I don't know. It's always seemed like another situation for me where like players died because a thing couldn't happen outside of game. So pretty freaking brutal.
Hey, dude, that's just the way things shake out.
Yeah, it's not a perfect game. It's really not.
It's not a perfect game. I'm just so excited because, like, well, what's occurring to me right in this moment, Josh? Cal should have rolled for Reeves to come out again when he went unconscious, but we forgot.
So it was so immediate and you came right back up. That might not be out of the picture yet. Reeves also works a little differently now. That will, I hate to be bleak, but almost definitely come up next session.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god, dude! Holy shit! Okay, well, I guess he came out yesterday too. So yeah, I don't know. Cal doesn't even know how that would work.
No.
Holy shit, dude! That's gonna be buck wild.
That much I'm excited for, at least.
Yeah, dude. We both these sessions that we went into are leading into some crazy combats. It's like shout out to Mac right now. If I haven't already shouted you out, but that move with suggesting the King's Elect and just banking, being like, you know what, go on your merry way, go back to the bar, get a drink, wait for things to get hairy, and then find us. That was so smart. That was so smart, dude. That was so cool. I really like as a DM, you guys just give me so much good stuff to kind of bounce. Jose, like this. Oh man, and this next session, I'm giving Mac a new position that I just kind of invented called Master of Ceremonies, which was inspired by you, Josh, pretty much just giving me co-DMing privileges.
Yeah.
Matt, I really, for the first like 2/3 of my campaign of Josadius, I have been controlling the music because my music is sick and I have the best music taste and everybody else's music taste is pretty shit. You know what I'm saying? But as this campaign has progressed, as I yearn for change, I've realized that this group of players is perhaps the most reverent about music of any D&D players I've ever played with. They love, we connect so much about it. And so it's time for me to hand the reins over. So Mac is going to be in charge of who does the music each week, whether it's him, whether it's me. And of course, I'll have override privileges because you can't give players too much control, right?
No, that's too much fun.
Yeah, too much fun.
Realize they don't need, they can just sit around and tell stories about fantasy all day.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I was talking to the guy. So I should also shout out, and I'll send this to him, my childhood best friend, Grant Mers,
Hey.
Who got me into D&D. When I was 13 years old, he said, Charlie, we're doing something called D&D. You should come over, roll up a character. I played a high elf wizard. His name was, oh shit. You know what, Jordan? I got to take this. I'll be back in 2 shakes.
Oh, okay. We'll take this all out in post. Or I'll do another one of my lonely monologues. It's been a few. Ironlights.
Now, what to say? Bleakwood voice is sort of inspired by Illidan. It's my best at the Liam O'Brien, though he probably goes deeper in his voice.
I've been thinking a lot about voices lately. That's what we're getting into here. Most of my D&D prep is me doing weird voices alone in a corner of my room. Supposedly alone. Sometimes there's a stray brother in a love seat. They look up and we have eye contact. And yeah, it's interesting.
Well, Patrick Warburton was fun.
It was a good time. I'm terrified of loneliness. Did you know this? Maybe that's too deep. I can say anything to you, though. Blonde reflection of myself. Mirror on my screen. I ask it to show me my friends. I say, give me Charlie. Let us record something. And there's me staring back. How will I know you in the underworld? How will we find each other? The door creaks open. Darkness answers. It's just a raven. It's good. Yeah, I'm actually taking this one out in post. Wow, this is low. Timestamps below if you want to skip past all of this and spare yourself enemies of suffering. Oh, a mind is a terrible thing to lose. The D20. Best thing made out of triangles. I don't have a therapist. I really ought to, you know. Should probably, Charlie! Oh. Yeah, I get it. I got it. There's tech stuff. Just trust me. It's back to the civil superego.
We're back.
Uh-huh.
What were we talking about? Oh, you were talking this whole time, Jordan.
No.
Good on you.
No, not really.
Oh, you weren't. Okay.
Or at least I didn't notice. I don't. You have an
Um,
MC.
should
Music.
we? Are we picking it up? Are we picking it up where I left off? Do we still have that time, or
We're probably gonna
were
pick
you?
it up and drop it off pretty fast here, actually.
Yeah. We've got like less than 5 minutes.
Good enough.
Cool. What else do I want to bring up? Oh, what was I about to say? Oh yeah, and also just like Josadius news. Um, I just recently shout out Ginny D. I just learned about luck.
Hey, yeah, she's pretty big on YouTube. Big critter.
Yeah. She has like I have her opinion. I have my opinions about her personally and the what stuff she does on social media. But the stuff that she does like on YouTube and DM tips is really, really, really sterling. But she just explained the luck mechanic, which pretty much is the whole. So Mercer lets his players do this thing where they can just give each other advantage for free.
Sure.
But that's the point of luck is you get a luck point and you can use it yourself to get advantage on a roll, or you can give it to one of your other players. And so that's what I'm going to be doing starting next week. That's how we're going to do it, because I was doing the same thing, right? Players could just give themselves advantage. Gleason just turned a natural 1 into a 31 from advantage, guidance, bardic inspiration, flash of genius, plus assist, right? This is just going to be a small nerf. And the way that I'm going to make it fun is that I'm not going to be giving inspiration. I'm going to be giving inspiration next session. And then from then on, whoever was given previous inspiration, the inspiration the previous week, will award it at the end of the session to the next player they think deserves it.
What?
Isn't that great?
That's excellent.
So that's my plan. I'm excited about that. We're playing tomorrow. It's been a month. I'm driving back into Ann Arbor. We're making this happen. I'm really excited. I've also got 3 of my players in town as well.
Wow.
So we might be doing something.
Think about
we
it.
might be meeting in person. I don't know.
We're definitely gonna.
I'm
try
pretty
and get you down to
excited.
England soon. So.
And the last thing in just DM Charlie news before closing remarks is that I have decided I'm going to tell my party that I won't be DMing for them after this. At least not until one of them runs a full-length campaign.
I am in the exact same place for
right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I will not be forever DMing, and I will happily wait my turn for them to take up the reins. I hope that I get to play with this group for the rest of my life. They're just the best. But I'm not sure that they know what's going to happen after this campaign is over. So maybe they just want to be post D&D for a while. That's okay. See what life is like without it. I don't get it, but I respect it.
Yeah. I've got a pretty strong argument for that in my heart of hearts.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Right. All right. We got 70 seconds. Closing remarks.
Closing remarks. This game is a lot. This last session made me want to end Pragasfar. Not because it was such a bad session that I have to get out of here, but because I realized that if we drag this on till the end of time, I won't be able to do what I want to do. The story I want to tell has an ending. Maybe it exists most in the ending. And I'm
nervous, man. I'm nervous. I'm not ready to let go of Pragasfar.
No, by no means am I, but we'll have to.
We've got to, man. I should just more lighthearted reflection. We didn't really talk about that much of the heavy stuff this week. We really got into the nitty gritty of the game and the players.
Sure.
Because usually we wax poetic.
My monologue was pretty bad.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, dude, I'm hyped for Pragasfar coming up. We're doing Blades in the Dark, DM'd by Houston pretty soon. We didn't talk about that.
That'll probably be next thing we talk about here.
More to come. Houston and James are doing a DM journal together. It might be some guesting.
Oh God.
Stay tuned.
We'll make an announcement when that comes up. Absolutely. Sister channel when? Comet Cloud, bring it to me.
Ironlight.
Stroke.
But to this week I say goodbye to Jim. Love you.
See you, Jimmy.